So welcome to Biker Bushcraft. I want to start this video by thanking everybody who came over here from Yankees Outdoor after watching the meet and greet that I did over there, and welcome all of my new viewers in general and new subscribers. I thank you all very much for your views, for your comments, and for your subscriptions. I hope that you'll enjoy the video that's coming up and the future videos to come. In this video, I'm going to give a specific shout out to Spirit Forest. I want to say, so many of you gave me great comments, and I will shout out to each and every one of you who gave me ideas, had questions in future videos. This one, I'm going to focus on some of Spirit Forest's questions, specifically about my shelter. You asked, how long does it take to set up? And I did answer in the comments, but I'm going to show you, and we're actually going to time it. As all of you are familiar with who watched my channel, I've got my bedroll and my tarp shelter rolled up on the bars here. I'm going to set that up. Now, if you watched my last few videos, you'll know I added a sheepskin because of the cold weather. And that turns out to have been a really good addition. It really helped me out on the last trip once I got it dialed in. Now, I've also added a rain fly. In the past years, I've always used a poly tarp when it was raining and just kind of throw that up on the line. This year I decided to spoil myself and spend a little money and get an actual rain fly, something that isn't quite as crinkly as a poly tarp and is a little bit more suited for what I'm doing. So without further ado, I'm going to get to setting up my shelter. Okay, everything's off the bike and ready to set up. I'm going to go ahead and set up my tent shelter first. Said I'd time it. It's 10 minutes after 3, so let's see where we end up. I try to make sure I roll my tarp and bedroll up in a way that I can set it on the ground and just unroll it and things will be in the right position. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And of course I've got my 4-foot section, or 3.5 or whatever it is foot section of tarp that I fold under because it's a rectangle tarp. That gives me the built-in ground cloth. I've got a loop I keep made up with the toggle. Goes on the handlebars. And gets toggled to the tarp. I find my other corner here. Let's take the back corner so that I have the ridge line of the tarp set up, and I can pull out the plow ears here and set them up. And again, I'm pulling in that 2 eyelets for my ground cloth. Now typically when you see me set this up, I'm setting it up with the bed roll on the other side. That's just what I'm used to. In this case, I want it to be close to the fire. So I'm putting it on the other side, which is making it more of a challenge. After I get everything staked out, then I go back around and adjust things as I need to. And a couple more stakes in here just to keep the edge down, and a baton. Because you do not want to hit metal stakes with your axe. You never want to hit metal with an axe. It's a bad idea. So a wood baton, and we're good to go. Pull this out a bit. And there we go. Now you notice I did add one other item to my tarp since the last time I showed this on camera. That's an additional tie out, and I'll be using that when I put up the rainfly. So there it is. Let's see how long that took to set up. Well, it's 3:16. So what was that, about 6 minutes? There you go. Next, I got to do the rainfly. So the next step in this process is to take our paracord and put it around the stump. I'm using a Canadian jam knot on this. It's an overhand knot at the end, a loose overhand knot. Paracord goes through it. I pre-tied that before I climbed up here. So this end is secure. I want this high enough to give me a ridge line that I can walk around under and make myself comfortable in the campsite. Now I got to do the other end. So I've got the other end of our paracord. Now if you've got two trees that you can work with, setting up camp between two trees is ideal. If you don't, which I didn't in this case, at least not to have a good spot for my tarp structure and also to deal with the existing fire ring. So I have one tree, so I built a tripod. Tripods are great. So again, you want your tripod to stand about head height. And then I'm going to take this paracord and I'm going to stake it down into the ground. You'll also notice that I use this nice bright red paracord that I've talked about. The reason for that is I've got that guy line out here that I don't want to trip on. Makes it a little easier to see. Gives me at least some chance of not landing on my face. So now I'm going to take my rain fly and I'm going to put it over this ridge line. And the reason I am doing this over the ridge line instead of under it, as it was designed, is because I want to be able to hang stuff from the ridge line, damp clothes. If I was riding in a rainstorm and pulled over to set up some shelter, I'm going to be wet. And I need to get out of those wet clothes, get warmed up, get dry clothes on as fast as possible. And I need some chance for those clothes to dry. So I want them to be able to hang underneath my rain fly to dry out. So my rain fly has its own ridge line. You can see the seam here. So I'm going to take one side of it and I'm just going to throw it over. Then once it's on here, I'm going to take some more paracord, tie it on here, grab a couple of toggles, and secure the ends. Once I've put the toggles on here, I can slide these knots and get it down where I want it so it's tightened up. Okay, now our ridge line's done. Everything's tied off there. You can see I've got a little bit of an area here to work. Now I'm going to want to take the line and a couple of stakes that came with the rain fly and try and unknot this. And again, you can see I've already got the bike covered and most of the front of the tarp structure covered. So if I set this up as the very first thing coming out of riding in a rainstorm, I'm going to have a dry place to work. And then we've got one more at this corner. The reason I'm doing this side first is I want to make sure that the side that's going to be my working area is pulled out the farthest and adjust the way I want it. And then the other side is no big deal to go back and adjust to whatever tension I want so that I've got enough tension to keep it from flapping around in the breeze and keep it up in the air, but not so much tension that I'm going to tear it or that I'm going to tear other things apart, like pulling down my ridge line. There we have it. Rain flies up. This gives me an area underneath where I can hang out. Now, there's a few other things I could do with this. I could arrange this a little different so it's running crossway over the ridge line. That'd give me more room. And I got to admit, this is the first time I've set this particular rain fly up. I've always used polytarp, rather larger polytarp, but I figured it would be worth a try to get something a little bit bigger and see how that worked out. Not as much room as I'd like, but again, I could make adjustments according to what the circumstances are. I may actually cut a branch and make a pole here and just tie it off. If you watched my gear on a budget video, you'll know how I can put a bead or a rock or something in here and create a new tie off, and then put that through a branch with a Y on it, put it up here, and then I've got a much larger work area. Again, that's dry, and that's my main concern, is to stay dry. I want to stay dry when I crawl out of the bunk, when I crawl out of the tarp structure. I want to stay dry while I'm getting things put together. Okay, there's one more piece to this puzzle. I mentioned earlier that I added some tie-outs to my tarp. I haven't tried them yet, so we'll see how this works out. I've got some of the extra line so I'm just going to run that back over my tripod. And it's staked down pretty solid over there. I'm going to put in a loop. And I'm going to run it through the tie-out. And then I'll pull this up. Hope to pull this up. Come on. Now let's see which one it doesn't like here. There we go. Yeah, that'll work. The reason I'm doing this is just to get it off of my toes at the end there. So there you have it. Structure set up and waterproof, comfortable, warm. So the next question I want to address was one about more detail on how I reorganized my bedroll the last time to stay warm. So let me bring the camera inside and I'll show you how this is set up. So here's my bedroll setup. You can see the tarp that I have reflective side up. I have dragged that out. If it's raining, I can drag it back in, or I can move my bedroll in and I can keep the tarp out as a place to put my shoes. Notice it goes all the way up under the bike, so I put my boots there at night so they can dry off. Then inside, I've got my blanket and also my sheepskin. The wool blanket that I have is sitting on top of my sleeping mat. You've seen that in other videos. And the wool blanket I have turned diagonally. And the reason I do this, it's much warmer. When I said I was burritoed up in my blanket, that meant that I was laying on it diagonally with the point down at my feet folded up over my feet towards my knees, and then the 2 points on the sides wrapped around me, and that effectively gives me a couple of layers on top. And then I put the sheepskin on top, and the sheepskin is first side down, and that kept me plenty warm even when the temperatures got down into the 30s. So that's the specifics of how I have this set up. for wintertime use. I do intend to get a second wool blanket, and then I will have this wool blanket underneath me as a cushion, and then burrito myself into the other one, and that should give me substantially more warmth. Stay tuned, that's soon to come. So if you have any other questions about my bedroll, please post them in the comments section, and I will be more than happy to answer them. So there it is. There's my shelter. About 6 minutes to set up my tarp shelter. The rainfly takes substantially less time than it took me this time, because it was the first time setting this up and I improvised along the way. I am going to change a few things on how I do that, but that's the gist of it. That's how it works. And Mark, there's how the bedroll was set up at my last campsite, and that's how I plan to be setting it up for the rest of the winter. So hopefully that answered your questions. If you have more questions, please ask. And to everybody, if you have questions about any of the gear I have, how I set it up, how I do things, please ask in the comments section. Leave a comment. Even if you don't have a question, please leave a comment. Tell me how I'm doing. Tell me if you're enjoying the videos. I appreciate all of you watching my videos. If you liked it, please give a thumbs up. If you liked it also, please hit the red subscribe button. That way you'll know the next time I put out a video. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. We'll see you on the next one. So as a postscript, before I close this out, I couldn't handle it. I had to change it. Like I said, this is the first time using this rainfly, and I talked about putting a pole up here, and I had a brainstorm. And that is to disconnect the ridge line, the rainfly from the ridge line, and just pull it over, move the stakes. I did that. I've got a tremendous amount of extra space under here. I did put a stick under. I've just got a string over it right now. I'll secure that better later, but I wanted to see what it looked like. So that's what it looks like. Now the cool thing about this is, again, if it's raining, my tarp's covered, everything's covered, and I've got this area right here where I can build a small campfire. So I can build a fire, I can warm up, the fire's underneath the rainfly, and a small fire is not going to melt the rainfly, and it's not going to hurt anything else under there, so that'll give me warmth, that'll dry my clothes, and end up being an awesome way to stay dry. That's typically how I do it with a big poly tarp, but again, I'm new to this one, so I was trying to figure out how to configure this, and this seems to work. I like it. I'm going to have to fine-tune it, but when it rains, you guys get a video of me camping in the rain. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed my video.